Hello and welcome to the Holistic Menopause Solution Summit, where you'll discover fresh, practical ways to calm the chaos of midlife, boost your energy, and feel at home in your body again. Each conversation is here to support you in taking small, meaningful steps toward the vibrant life you deserve, starting right where you are. I'm Eliza Riley, founder of Menopause and Chill, and I'm honored to be your host for this summit. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Dr. Tricia Thompson. Dr. Thompson is a board-certified physician and founder of Root Cause Doc, an online functional and integrative medicine practice that serves women nationwide. After spending years on the front lines of emergency medicine, she saw firsthand how conventional medicine often falls short in addressing chronic, unresolved conditions. Now, through her functional medicine practice, she helps women identify the root causes of stubborn symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, and autoimmune issues, using advanced testing and holistic strategies to create lasting change. Dr. Thompson's mission is to empower women to take control of their health through detoxification, lifestyle changes, and nutritional optimization. All of that sounds truly amazing, and I'm sure lots of women who are watching are like, yes, that's me. She's speaking my language. Dr. Thompson, welcome. I am so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Eliza. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to talk about everything that you're focused on here.
Yeah. So I'm so excited. So let's jump right into it, because just like you, I'm sure, so many women at this stage of our lives are told that this exhaustion, this like constant fatigue is just either a part of menopause or a part of aging.
Mhm.
And I know that that you have found that sometimes it's something deeper, like undiagnosed SIRS or toxic burden. So first off, can you just start by explaining to us what SIRS is and how it affects the body?
Yeah. So SIRS is chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's a big fancy name that means your whole body is inflamed. And the triggers for SIRS can be many different things. So they can be stressors or traumas. It can be mold or heavy metals, other environmental toxins like glyphosate or things that are in our food and our water, organophosphates. So there's a lot of things, including medications, even some vaccines, and long COVID is a classic chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So it's one of the things that's kind of gotten a lot of press, obviously, in the last several years. But the biggest issue is that 25% of the population of the United States has these specific alleles or genes that make them more susceptible to these things than others. So I often see couples, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. The husband usually is fine, but the wife is a disaster. And it's not just her hormones that are the problem, it's that she has this increased sensitivity. I call it the canary in the coal mine. So they pick things up and they can't label and tag the toxins and get them out of their system in the same way. So that's basically what chronic inflammatory response syndrome is, but it can cause symptoms all over the body. So sometimes it's just joint aches, poor sleep, more importantly, waking up early and not being able to get back to sleep. Fatigue, brain fog, word finding, that's a huge one. So unlike other kind of lapses where you walk into the room, you're like, ooh, why am I here? Or where the heck did I put my keys? That, like, you're in the middle of a sentence and you know what you want to say and it just won't come out. That's a classic SIRS finding that most people kind of ignore, and they're like, oh, am I losing it? Am I getting dementia? What's going on here? So it leads to a lot of other issues like chemical sensitivities, food sensitivities, gut issues. So these people tend to come with a lot of stuff and a lot of labels and a lot of doctors, and they often have fibromyalgia and other things like that, that really this is the cause to begin with.
That's so interesting, because so many of the things that you have mentioned are so prevalent, and yet we're not talking about SIRS. We're not, that's not something that is really spoken of. So if you're a woman who is listening right now and you're wondering, how can I know if it's just hormones or if it's something deeper like SIRS, what are some ways for her to like rule out or consider that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times the symptoms will go in phases. So you'll be okay a few days, and then all of a sudden you're like, crash.
Mm.
And then you'll kind of pick yourself back up slowly and you'll be okay for a while and then you'll crash. And when you go back and you start looking at where did that crash come from? So once it happens enough times and all of a sudden you wake up one morning, everything hurts in your body, you're like, okay, what did I do yesterday? I didn't work out. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't work in the garden. What did I eat? Where did I go? And a lot of times it's a really subtle exposure. So it can be from foods, certainly, but going into a moldy building, going on a vacation at a beach house, like notoriously, that is a story that I hear over and over. Hey, we took this great vacation to the Outer Banks and then everything got crazy. So, the problem with comparing this or looking at this in menopause is that people go, oh, I'm just in menopause and that's why everything hurts and that's why I'm tired and that's why I don't sleep well and all the other things. But really the estrogen that we have before we go into menopause is protective against this. So when we hit menopause, everything kind of escalates and gets worse because that protective estrogen is no longer there. And even when you go on hormone therapy, you might feel some better, but it doesn't remask the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it does explain why you may have had it for a very long time and never really experienced or never really the symptoms didn't show up the way that they are now. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, SIRS is something that is so often missed in women who are going through midlife. Why do you think that this particular diagnosis is so commonly overlooked, and how can we be proactive in our own healthcare and make sure that that's not the case for us?
Well, I think it's overlooked because I mean, a lot of this stuff is overlooked in mainstream medicine anyway, right? It's all of these seemingly unrelated complaints. And if you go to your primary care doctor with 15 things, they're like, okay, you have 7 minutes. I need to hear the big two. Okay, so the big two are I don't sleep and my gut's a disaster, right? What do? All the regular testing, all the blood work, and it all turns out mostly normal, right? And that just makes us feel as people who have these problems like we're being dismissed, we're being ignored. And then when we throw the whole hormone piece on top of it, they're like, "Ah, it's just menopause. It's no big deal. Everybody goes through it. You're going to be fine. We'll throw some, here's some sleeping pills. Here's an antidepressant." So, I mean, I know this is not a story you haven't heard before, and everybody else too. But the biggest thing is really being aware that there what you're dealing with is not just hot flashes and some difficulty sleeping. Like that, yeah, that's very likely menopause, but that temperature sensitivity or inability to regulate your temperature is also a classic SIRS diagnostic criteria. And we have a whole panel of the diagnostic criteria that I'd be happy to share so that you could put it in the notes and they can go, oh, yep, 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 yep. And if you've got more than 3 or 4 of those, then you definitely need to be looking deeper that there's something else besides just menopause or perimenopause going on.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think, it's such a good point that you make that, and we know this, you exactly what you said, you go to the doctor and you can have, 5 or 10 symptoms that are all happening. And there will be in ranges of like really severe to more mild. And when we go to the doctor and we have to choose the 1 or 2 that are really ringing alarm bells for us, the rest of them, even though they may all be connected, get completely dismissed unless you want to make another appointment, 5 more appointments so that you can come back for every single thing. But I love the idea of having a checklist where you can go in and take a look and see. And in that way, if you do go back to your doctor, you can say, hey, can I be tested for this thing? So that, rather than saying, I have these symptoms, what might it be? So much, it's so important to be our own advocate.
It is important to be your own advocate and do know though that if you walk into most primary care offices and say I have SIRS, they're going to say you're crazy or I don't know what that is or maybe this is real but I don't know what to do with it. So you really have to be a little strategic in seeking out the right sort of care to get the real answers.
Thank you for saying that, because that's such an important distinction. And you're absolutely right. I mean, as much as we may love our conventional, mainstream medical professional, they're not always well versed in some of these other things that we have going on in our in that are real things that are happening. They're not as aware of them as some other people. So you want to make sure that you're going to the right person
Yeah.
for a diagnosis and for a treatment.
Yeah. And from my background, I mean, I was an ER doctor for 20 years. I mean, I was a DO by choice. So I chose a more holistic path, but then I chose acute care. And if
Mhm.
you're dying, you're having a heart attack, you broke your leg, like that's the best place to be. But the reason I'm doing the work that I'm doing now is because all these people were coming in with all of these complaints. And I'm like, we can fix this. I might not know exactly how, but there's no way that this huge percentage of the population has all of this chronic stuff going on and there's not a way to fix it. So that's why I actually went back and retrained and did a fellowship in integrative medicine and functional medicine to get the education necessary. And this really lights me up. I want people to understand whatever is going on, we can make it better. We may not put it all the way into what I call remission, but you can get a lot better pretty quickly.
Yeah. I love it. We have so many doctors on the summit who went back to learn about, holistic medicine and functional medicine and different modalities after, many, many years for most of you of having done the conventional route for so long and then recognizing that there are answers that you don't have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely. There
it's
was no medication that was gonna fix these 18 different things, and they came in on 15 different medicines, which were really only making things worse, not
yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Truly applaud doctors who see that and
Yeah.
and decide to not just go like, oh, well, this is the way it is, but to go
Mm.
back and actually do something about it. It's amazing. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that choice for all of us.
But aw,
So
thanks.
I do have more questions for you.
Yeah, go,
Um,
go, go.
so often women at midlife, you mentioned several of the very common symptoms that women tend to struggle with, the exhaustion, the brain fog, even like you mentioned, inflammation and pain. And we're often told that it's due to our hormones, due to our shifting hormones. But you have found that it can often be mold or biotoxin exposure. That's
Mhm.
the real culprit. So, what are some signs that someone's symptoms may not just be our hormones?
So a lot of the things that I already talked about, like when they're just really big and cycling in big ways, like so that you're debilitated on some days, like menopause really shouldn't do that to you. I mean, that can be uncomfortable, but that really shouldn't happen. Um, when you go into, certain buildings, like if you find out you take 2 weeks off of work and you're like, man, I'm so much better, and then you go back to work, that's a sign that the building has a problem, and we can test for that. We can look at your urine test and we can know if there are mold toxins in your system. So we can actually measure that. And then we know how long it's going to take to kind of clear those out. But first thing we got to do is get you out of the place that is triggering this stuff in the first place. Allergy symptoms. So everybody, this time of year, especially, pollen's everywhere. It's like, oh, seasonal allergies. What's really interesting is when we go through the whole SIRS protocol, 90% of my seasonal allergy clients don't have seasonal allergies anymore.
Wow.
They come into the spring and they're like, what just happened? I was on Claritin and Allegra and nasal sprays, and their symptoms are gone because we've actually cleared the toxins from their body. And now you look like your best friend who doesn't get bothered by the pollen, that sort of thing. Did I answer your question, or is there another piece to that?
Well, the question, I feel like you did. I was just asking, what are the signs that that some of these symptoms are not just hormones, and that it could be mold or toxins.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that, and then when you start to think about it, so now I'm bringing awareness to this for you. And when you go back and you say, ooh, what about that apartment I lived in college, And you say, oh, when I went to this country, I had really bad symptoms or when I came back and, or I had Montezuma's Revenge in Mexico. So your gut got screwed up. So once your gut got screwed up, we've created all this inflammation throughout the rest of the system, and that inflammation now can't get processed in the way that it used to, and then you get the next thing and the next thing. So if it's really been compounding over a period of time, but it can be something very acute too. So Lyme disease, classic SIRS trigger. So if you've had Lyme in the past, and chronic Lyme is one of those very interesting diagnoses, because a lot of times we can't find evidence that you still have Lyme disease. So the symptoms that you're having are actually the damage that was done from the toxin, from the Lyme, or from the mold, or from the heavy metals. So then we are really looking at, how do we repair the system? How do we repair the mitochondria? And how do we get the detox pathways working the way they're supposed to, because they were damaged in that process?
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I'm thinking that if I went back and really thought about like when I felt good and when I
Mm.
didn't feel good, there's probably some sort of a connection there to that you can make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the things that we spend a lot of time with our clients, building that timeline. And we talk about from before you were born till now. So we talk about
Wow.
mom and dad. We talk about stuff that happened when you were in utero, early childhood, lots of antibiotics that sets you up oftentimes to have these issues later on in life. And some of it, like I said, 25% of it could be your genes, but the rest of it is what you're exposed to.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, I know we've talked a lot about toxins and inflammation and how, but I'm curious about how these things can actually damage our mitochondria.
Mm.
Why would that be problematic for women at midlife?
It's problematic for everybody. It just gets worse at midlife. So molds, heavy metals, chemicals, they create these things called reactive oxygen species.
Mhm.
Reactive oxygen species, I think of as like acid rain, and that creates like a rust in your body. That damages your mitochondria. So everybody may not remember from high school biology, the mitochondria, the little energy factories, they make your energy, your ATP, but they also are a huge piece of your immune system. And when that rust gets in there, the mitochondria stop producing energy at the right levels. So you kind of peter out at the end of the day. You have that afternoon slump, or you just can't recover after a workout like you used to. That creates this fatigue, muscle weakness, memory issues, because every cell in our body has mitochondria. So even your brain cells. And part of that, like, you get halfway through the day and you're like, I can't look at another email. I can't get on another Zoom call. I can't go to this meeting because I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. That's fatigue in the brain, and that's a mitochondrial injury. The other thing is anxiety. So a lot of people that all of a sudden, they weren't anxious as kids, they didn't get nervous standing in front of a room, but all of a sudden they're like, they don't want to drive a car, they don't want to go in front of a group, they start canceling appointments. Like, that is a big sign that something shifted in your energy level, in your mitochondria, because anxiety is not normal. And anxiety is one of those things that often at this point in life gets worse too, right? You might have had a little bit around some Lexapro that did the trick, but all of a sudden it's like overwhelming. That is another sign that the mitochondria are shutting down and not working as well. And estrogen really protects our mitochondria. So when we have high enough estrogen levels, we can deal with all of this better. It's an antioxidant defense, estrogen is, just by itself. So as those estrogen levels start to drop, our mitochondria get left unprotected and they can't heal as quickly as they did before. And they continue to kind of degrade, which is unfortunate. And that's when most people kind of come to me. They're like, I just can't do this anymore. Can't live this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting the number of things that actually do affect our mitochondria and how much
Mhm.
our everything that we do is affected by that, by the
Mhm.
mitochondria being damaged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And it can be gradual, or it can be really abrupt. So, for most people, it's pretty gradual, and then the hormone shift happens, and we're like, "Oof, what just hit me?"
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And another thing that I feel like we don't talk enough about is liver health
Mhm.
at midlife, especially when it comes to hormone balance and detoxification. So, can you explain why a sluggish liver can keep women stuck in fatigue and struggling with their symptoms?
Oh. Yeah, I mean, this could be a whole 2-hour lecture, so I'll try not to get too complicated. But the way our liver works, it works in 3 phases of detox: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And I'll be really brief, but in phase 1, these are lipid soluble, so fat soluble toxins get in there. They have to have all of these chemical things happen to them to get to phase 2. Then phase 2 gets them to water soluble, and then we can pee and poop them out. Really simple, right? But what we often do is get stuck in phase 1 or stuck in phase 2, and we never get everything out. So the liver gets more and more sluggish. And this actually affects estrogen, because if we don't detoxify estrogen properly, one, it hangs out at higher levels. And if it gets stuck in phase 2 detox, there's another genetic pathway that leads to more DNA damaging estrogens. So it's a genetic pathway. So we can't change the genes, but we can fix it before we get to that end stage. And that's really highly tied to estrogen related cancers, so cervical cancer, breast cancer, other things like that. So it's very important that the liver is working optimally. And we ask a lot of our livers, and when we are eating things that are, processed, all those chemicals, our liver doesn't even know what to do with it. Fructose, high fructose corn syrup, don't get me started. Your liver cannot do anything with it, which is why we have all of these young people with fatty liver disease. Their liver is turning to fat. It doesn't filter anymore. So when those estrogens and toxins, they go through the same pathways. So they're a sign that things aren't working right when we have hormonal outbreaks. So example, acne in your 40s, that's a liver problem. That's not a hormone problem. So if we're not detoxifying everything properly and cleaning out the system, then we can't get rid of this stuff. And then we get histamine flares, rashes, hives. Everybody gets too sensitive. They're like down to 6 foods that they can eat safely, and everything triggers them. Mood swings. It's a big piece of liver detoxification. So when you're stuck in phase 1, when you give yourself a toxic load, so maybe you just go out and have a couple of drinks one night, that's a toxic load that can't get processed. And the next day, grumpy, aggravated. And it's not just a hangover. You drink enough to have a hangover. It's that your liver doesn't know what to do with that. It can't process it anymore.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point that you make about the liver, because so often women, as a menopause coach, women come to me and say, should I be on hormone therapy? And my first thing is, well, we got to talk about your liver first, because it doesn't matter if you're making the right hormones or if you're adding them. If your liver can't do what it needs to do with them, it's a band-aid and you're not helping yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. The liver is, I mean, we can't live without one. And
Mhm.
most of us, it's not quite as good as it could be. And there's
Mhm.
definitely things that we can do to improve that. And the first step is, I know I've heard you talk about this. We got to clean up your diet. And it doesn't have to be hard. And you talk about little bits by little bits. And yeah, just a little bit better every day, and the liver will heal itself. It really, I mean, we can take half a liver, chop it off, and give it to somebody else. Your liver will regrow, but we have to give it the right nutrients and tools to do that.
Yeah, the body is truly amazing, and it's always moving towards healing if we just get out of its way, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So I know that you do advanced functional testing in your practice to uncover some of these hidden toxic triggers like mold, Lyme, and chemical exposures. Can you share how this kind of testing can help women to finally understand what's happening with their health?
I can, but I want to start by saying, like, I don't start by testing a lot of people up front. I really don't. There's so many things that we can do to take you from point A to point B, C, D before we even look at the tests. So that history is super important, understanding that. Looking at your old lab tests. So when you've been sick for a long time, you've been to a dozen doctors and you've seen the hematologist and the rheumatologist and the endocrinologist. I take all of that information. I'm like, this has been going on since 1984. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? And then we can dive into deeper testing. So some of my favorites, I love a GI map test that really looks at the entire microbiome. It looks for gut inflammation, leaky gut. Are you making enough pancreatic enzyme to even break down your food? So that's a test that I use pretty often, especially if the gut isn't improved. The other thing is a total toxic burden test. And there's a couple of different companies that do versions of it, but it looks for molds. And we're all exposed to molds all the time. Some of them are no big deal. Others of them are nasty. So we always think of stacky batteries or black mold being the worst. And if I get a level that's, even after we've cleaned you up for 8 weeks, through the roof, I know we got to process. Like it gives me the information of how much time is this going to take us, or are you still being exposed? So we always try to, move people out of the environment that may have been the problem, but some people don't even know. And I have clients who, live in beautiful brand new homes, 2 or 3 years old, and they're like, it can't be my house. It's not. I'm like, something. And then they look, and I have one client that I'm thinking of, Holly, who was really, really sick. We got her a lot better. Then she went on vacation to a moldy place, came back home, and just couldn't get better again. And she had an encapsulated under her house, and it was white and beautiful and clean until they pulled it down, and all the mold was between the plastic and the house.
Oh,
And her
wow.
house is like 2.5 years old.
Wow.
So we have to keep looking and keep digging. So that toxic burden test can be really helpful, and we can look just for molds if we think that's it, but we can also look for environmental toxins, pesticides, organophosphates, glyphosate, things that are in the air, petroleum products from airplane fuel. I see that in people all the time. I'm like, why is there airplane fuel in your body? And heavy metals as well. So I see a lot less of that in the States unless people have lived other places. There is definitely some, but the heavy metal thing is more things like aluminum. So when you're taking your aluminum, your sheet pan, and you're covering it with aluminum foil because you don't feel like cleaning the thing, that aluminum is leaching into your system, and it's a toxin. And I've seen people with through the roof levels of aluminum. I'm like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I wrap everything in aluminum foil. I'm like, we gotta stop doing that now. And they clean up pretty quickly. And then there's some really interesting labs that you can get just through a traditional laboratory that are looking at kind of the end organ damage. So even after we got all the toxins out, how are those mitochondria? How are your proteins working? Are you getting enough oxygen to your tissues? So things like MSH and MMP9 and TGF beta 1, and they don't mean anything obviously to you, but they're important to me because they show me how much more work we need to do and where we need to focus. So we can get those tests done for most people, sometimes even through their own doctors. And it works out really well because then I can, and these are tests that most people don't even know what they mean, let alone know to order or how to interpret. So, yeah.
I love that. I also love that you don't go straight for the testing, that because testing can be such a useful tool, but I love that, you save that for when you really need it, and instead of just going straight to that. I think that's an amazing way to start.
Yeah, I think it is too, because I think it's really discouraging, and expensive, to do all that testing up front. And I've been doing this long enough and know people well enough that we can make 90% of the progress without ever doing a test. Some people come in and they just want to know, and I'm like, okay, we can know. But and especially after they've been told all their lives, your thyroid's normal, your labs are fine, and they still have a problem. That I found that even, doing the testing upfront, it doesn't work, and it's expensive.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
That's okay. So for like you just mentioned, for the women who are listening, and I apologize, I'm stumbling, but because I know they're out there, I know they're listening, and I know that they have been told your labs are normal, but she still feels terrible. What would you say to her?
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. You're just under investigated. You just haven't had the right questions asked in the right way at the right time to understand what's going on with you. So insomnia, brain fog, all of the everything, weight gain, right? How many women come to me? I can't lose 30 pounds. I've done every diet. I've done the GLP-1s. They didn't do anything. Weight is a symptom. Weight is not the problem. So if your body is holding on to excess weight, it's doing it to protect you from something. And a lot of times those fat cells are full of those toxins. And actually, when we start to clean things out and they start to lose weight, they actually get worse symptoms again. They're like, oh my God, I'm going backwards. I'm dying. I'm like, nope, your fat's just releasing all that crap. And once it's out of here, it'll be out of here. And, it's often 4 or 5 months after working together. They feel great. Energy's awesome. Everything's good. But they're like, I've only lost 6 pounds, Trish. And I'm like, yep. And it will come. You just keep doing what you're doing. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, I just lost 15 pounds last month. I'm like, way to go. And I'm like, did you do anything different? Like, no, I ate more, way more. And I'm like, yes, because your body's asking for the fuel that it needs. So those things are really symptoms. And you're really not crazy. And I know you've been told that. And back in the day when I was in the ER, and this is total, I'll own this. People would come in and be like, but I know my body. I know my body. Something's wrong. And I'm like, this is not the place. I don't know how to help you. Like, we didn't have the tools. So if you know your body and you know something's wrong, like, keep looking. And there's a lot of ways to get to the answers.
Absolutely. That's so hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah. As well as helpful.
Thanks. Thanks.
Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with us today. If there were just one piece of advice that you would offer for a woman who is just beginning this journey and feeling stuck or disconnected, what would that be?
Don't give up. Don't give up. Take care of yourself. Prioritize yourself. You are enough. You are important. And just because nobody's found the answer doesn't mean the answer is not out there. And, women, not always, we often put ourselves in the back seat, right? We put everybody else first. And if your body's screaming at you, if you're having all of these symptoms, your body is trying to tell you something. So find somebody that you can work with that can figure this out. And you can get better really, really quickly. It doesn't, even if you've had symptoms for 20 years, I've had clients in 8 weeks drop their symptom score by 70, 80%. It's not, I don't want to say it's not complicated because there's a lot of pieces, but it's not hard and you can do it. And you just got to find the right person to help you do it.
I love that. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's cool.
I believe you have a gift for our listeners. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I do. So my gift is something that we usually include with our consults, and it's called the Root Cause Roadmap. It's a tool that I designed to identify those missing links. So it takes about 6 minutes. It's a computer quiz. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions that you're going to be like, why is she asking me this? And it's really designed to pick and pinpoint what's going on. And then there's like 10 categories of information you get back. You get toxic exposure information, you get detox pathway information, hormones, musculoskeletal stuff, hemoglobin A1C, like blood sugar, metabolic things, neuroinflammation. So it gives you a score in all of these buckets. So if you do really well, you want your score to be low. So it's backwards. So if you get 100, that's not a good thing. And it actually grades everything by color. So if it's red, that is boo, 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 your body's saying, we got to do something now. If it's orange, it's I kind of the zone of false wellness. You might not feel horrible, but you're getting close to that. If it's green, cool. Sometimes that's genetic, everything's going well. But it really can give you a very clear idea of what is potentially missing. And then you can direct yourself into where you look next.
I love that. That's an exciting thing that you're sharing with us. And I truly appreciate it. And I'm actually going to go and take that quiz right away.
Yeah, so we'll
Looking
put the
forward to
link. I think you'll put it in the notes, and all you do is click, put your name and your email, and then we'll actually send you the results to your email immediately after it's done.
Awesome. So where
Okay.
can people find you if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
So rootcausedoc.com, rootcausedoc.com is my website. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, so you can find me there at Dr. Tricia or Root Cause Doc, either way. And I'm in Ocean City, Maryland. That's where our primary office is, but we actually don't see anybody in person anymore. Everything is done virtually through HIPAA compliant Zoom. So you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to, sit in the waiting room. You don't have to be around other people. And it works out really, really well. I have a whole team of health coaches, nutrition coaches, and even mindset and meditation coaches that work with our clients, because it's not just the medical piece, it's all of it. And we're here to support you to get you the fastest to the end point that you can get, and not mess around and not just do one thing at a time.
That's so exciting. And I'm sure that's well, I'm sure that lots of our listeners are going to be knocking on your door very soon. Virtual.
Well, that would be great. I would love you to knock on my virtual door, and I have a lot of educational stuff on my website, so a lot more information there as well.
Thank you again for being here with us today and for sharing all of this amazing stuff with us. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, Eliza. Thanks for sharing what you share. And I really think that, menopause is not a diagnosis. It's a state of life, and there's amazing things on the other side. I'm there myself. And just don't think that this is all just one thing. It can be a lot of other stuff. And that's just what I wanted to come on and open people's eyes to.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to not stay stuck in this idea that you already you already know the answer.
Mhm.
Keep looking. You'll get it. Yeah. Thank you all
Yeah.
for joining us for the Holistic Menopause Solution Summit. Be sure to join us next time for another inspiring conversation to bring you holistic solutions for your peri to post menopausal journey. Bye, everyone.